Hey guys, we switched things up a bit. If you couldn't tell. We have to keep things real and fun in here. So if you have a Bible, do me a favor and open up to the book of Hebrews. So we're going to be moving through this series, and it's called the Jesus series. You're going to see a slide up there that says white flag, and here's why we've kept that up there and taught the Jesus series from within this white flag series, because the white flag series dealt with an attitude of humility and surrender, and what it means to truly submit and surrender, and why would you want to do that to a God you can't see? So we start this Jesus series a couple weeks ago. Joe led the way in Colossians chapter 1. Last week we were in John 1, did some what we would call Christology, theology, looking at the person of Jesus from the book of John. We're going to do some work here in Hebrews 1 tonight. How many of you guys have ever read this passage before? Hebrews chapter 1. Like, read it. Jason's like, me, bro, I did. I should have given you the upfront, hey, this is where we're going to be. We're going to do the entire chapter 1. We're going to camp out in a certain section because I don't want us to miss something here. When we talk about surrender, we talk about why would we surrender to a God we can't see, because here's the God we can see. Here's the God that has been seen and made himself known, and that's why we're going to spend some time in Hebrews chapter 1. The goal for this series, we've said this twice, now it's the third time. The goal for the series is for us to see, savor, and treasure Jesus, not another name. Now, we've spent a lot of time in different books. The bulk of our time this year has been in the Old Testament, right? Has been here, all Genesis to what book did we just finish? Anybody remember? Deuteronomy, right? We just finished that, and then we jumped from Deuteronomy into Colossians chapter 1. It's like, what? That's like a weird shift. I was just thinking something though. Just back there, we were singing this song, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. You silence fear. And I've only, this is your pastor being honest. And my desire to preach the entirety of the Bible over 6 years in here, I've only allocated 3 weeks to speak specifically about Jesus. The person and the work of Jesus in depth from passages in the New Testament speak about him in 3 different ways. And it would be a shame if we were to move past this series and never mention his name. And I fear sometimes we can get so busy in our lives, I can get so busy in my plan, and we can get so crazy busy caught up in our world that we forget that that is the one name given to men by which we are saved. The one name that matters more than any other name. So we're singing this song, and I'm back there listening to these words, and God made this worship set happen. All of the songs spoke of Jesus' power and his authority. And we're going to see all of that as we finish this series in Hebrews chapter 1. It's a couple things that I wanted to remind you of. There's a few passages we've used. Jesus said to them, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me shall not hunger, and whoever believes in me shall never thirst. That's John 6:35. There's a question that I have for you. Somebody give me the name of someone who is the best in their field. The absent John, who's the best in their field? Tom Brady's a good quarterback. Cheater. Ralph Green at kickball. Michael Phelps, swim champ. LeBron James. All right. What did you say? Yeah, 2. So don't say that. That's, I'll pay you later. Okay. Betsy, what you got? What you got, Josh? Who? Cristiano Ronaldo? No, that's, you got some disagreement over there. Okay, listen. The reason I ask that question is immediately your mind goes to someone who is just excelling at their sport. Here's the guy that was on the top of his game when I was in my 20s, and I got to witness it, the top of his game when I was younger, got to witness it for my birthday. My beautiful wife, growing up in Florida, golf is like a second game to you. It's just what you do. So I went to watch a golf tournament, and Ann came and picked me up. She said, I'm going to drive you. You have to just ride. And I was like, that's weird. It's my car. Like, I drive everywhere because I have a pace and a speed that I like to go. She said, no, I'm going to drive, and I'm not telling you where we're going. You need to wear like a golf shirt, dress halfway decent. I'm like, it's like October in Florida. I'm going to wear shorts anyway. So she picks me up. We start driving towards Orlando. Those of you who don't know this, I didn't know this. I grew up there. They have PGA quality golf courses. And they play golf tournaments there every year. It's like, well, this is pretty cool. We pull up and park at the Disney Park parking lot, and she gets the tickets out. She said, we're going over there. We're not going to Disney. We're going to go watch the golf tournament all day. And I was like, she loves me. Like she gets me. Like, yes, she's awesome. So we walk in. It's a National Car Rental Golf Classic. We walk into and there's like Tiger Woods is hanging out over there, and Davis Love is over there, and I'm mentioning all these names. You guys are like, who are these people? These are the people that taught your favorite golfers how to play. All right, just saying. So we walk over to the driving range. This is no joke. Tiger Woods is starting late because he's ahead in the field, so I always start them later in the morning. So I walk over to the driving range, and Tiger Woods is up there on the tee, and he's just practicing his swing, driving at like 350, not even trying hard. And some of y'all will get that. And he lines up, and ESPN had a camera on the ball when he hit it. And this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. In his backswing, he comes down, and the force that he hit the ball with, the ball collapsed. And then it expanded again, and it shook, and it took off. And somebody asked him, was that your full swing? Did you swing as hard as you could? He said, no. And then he did the next one. And it's like the ball was scared of him or something, because it was like jumped off the tee and took off. Like it didn't want to be hit by him. But when I watched that ball, like it just, the pressure, the force he hit would just squeeze that ball, and then it took off. And I thought, man, that's the coolest. He's got to be the strongest golfer. And he was approaching the top of his game. And what happened? He tanked, right? Goofball. Most famous people, here's the thing. Most famous people in your mind, listen to this. Most famous people that we elevate to places of prominence in our hearts will often fail us because they are just people. They will let you down every time. Why can I say that? Because I've watched it happen, right? They go nuts. They do stupid stuff. They cheat on their spouses. Or like several times. And then it finally comes out. Right? And everybody goes, oh, they were so awesome. Now they're not. And they lose everything. And their endorsements go away. And all of their fame eventually erodes to nothing. I would position to you that the person of Jesus is the most famous person that's ever lived, and he gets no credibility at all in our minds. Why would I say that? He wasn't wealthy. We don't see his name plastered all over TV screens on ESPN Sports Center when they roll their highlight reel that runs all day long, and it's the same stories over and over and over again. I could go to sleep at Sports Center after about 10 minutes. Here's what I fear, though. Even if you've grown up in church, and you've heard the stories of Jesus a million times, he will never reach the same prominence and fame in your heart and your mind as a famous celebrity will. Your favorite musician, your favorite movie star, your favorite athlete. Why? Why is that? Because we can't see him, right? All we have is stories about him. This story in Hebrews chapter 1, when we think about that person who was the best in their field, the best, most amazing person ever, there is no one who compares to Jesus. Entire philosophical systems are built upon his teaching. And he did, like, these guys that were dreaming goofy stuff up, like, oh, this is the right thing to do, like, don't talk bad about people behind their back because eventually it gets to them, right? That wasn't like some philosopher's idea in the 1940s. That came from Jesus, right? He said, go to your brother and work it out. All of these things that we rest our civilization on go back to the most famous person in the world. But here's what we do. We can't see him. We can't touch him. All we have is stories about him, and those stories begin to fade in our mind. I want to present to you the person of Jesus from the writer of Hebrews. So if you have your Bible, Let's stand together. We're gonna read this. So we're like, why are we standing? Here's why. Not because Pastor Chad does it. Not because, we're super traditional. Because this is more than printed words on a page or projected words on a screen. These are the words of God that we want to honor. So here we go. Verse 1. Long ago, many times and in many ways, God spoke to our fathers by the prophets. But in these last days, he has spoken to us by his Son, whom he appointed the heir of all things, through whom he also created the world. He is the radiance of the glory of God and the exact imprint of his nature. And he upholds the universe by the word of his power. After making purification for sins, he sat down at the right hand of the Majesty on high, having becoming as much superior to angels as the name he has inherited is more excellent than theirs. Let's pray together. Father, I thank you so much for your word. I thank you for this time we have to dig into it just a little bit. I pray that you would speak to us fresh and new, reveal to us something about your Son that we don't know. Maybe a new thought we've never ventured into thinking. Give us a bigger view of Jesus and a smaller view of ourselves. Help us to see him in his glory as he is today. I pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. You guys can have a seat. So here's what we get to discover tonight. Why Jesus? This is the truth, and we've looked at who is Jesus, and last week we talked about what is Jesus. Now we're going to look at why Jesus. Why was it necessary for God to send this person? And here's some of the things that I want us to see. Number one, Jesus alone is powerful to save. The title for tonight, if you're like me and you take notes that are like bulleted and have titles and the date, I'm a nerd that way. Jesus alone is the title for the message tonight. There's no one else like him. There never will be anyone like him. And Jesus alone is powerful to save. And when the writer of Hebrews opens his book, he's delivering something to us that I think if we kind of just casually pass by it, we'll miss the entire importance of this book of the Bible. Hebrews is attributed to a few people. I'm going to give you a couple ideas of my personal opinion about Hebrews. Some folks in the room will understand why I do this. No one really knows who wrote the book of Hebrews for sure. Right? So most books in the New Testament have an author, right? Paul writes some of them. Peter writes some of them. Matthew, John, Luke writes some of them. He writes two we know of for sure. Here's what I think about Hebrews. This is why this is important. What do we know about Paul? Anybody? My Bible's falling apart. What do we know about Paul?
Disciple.
He was what? Okay, he was an apostle, right? Not one of the original 12. He was close. He came a little bit after. What else? Huh? Previously was Saul. Okay, that's a little bit of his history. Then he, what? As Saul, he did what? Sure. Persecuted Christians. He was a what? What was he? He was a tax collector. He was a Pharisee and lawyer. This guy knew the law. So why would I ask you about Paul? Because when Paul would write his books of the Bible to the church, who did he address it to? He addressed most of them to the Jewish believers in that particular city. But he also understood the Gentile behaviors because he was also a Roman citizen. So Paul is a really cool guy. We look at him, he was raised a Pharisee, and he's also a Roman citizen. That's why when he goes and he's arrested, and they find out he's a Roman citizen in Acts, they say, take him to Caesar because he's got rights. As a Roman citizen, as a non-Roman, you had no rights. When Rome arrested you, they could kill you because you were just lesser than them. Paul's a really cool guy. And here's what I would say about this. The letter to the Hebrews reads like a letter from Paul at the end of his life, written to the Hebrew church by Luke. Because the language used here is very, very, very educated. Everybody thinks Luke was a doctor. So I'm nerding out on you for a minute, but I'm trying to help you with something. It may add color to the book if we think, just for a moment, that we have an idea who the author is. Because what the writer of Hebrews does in the very beginning of this book is he draws our attention to some realities about who God is. And then he drops the bomb on you in verse 3. Verse 3 says this: He is the radiance of the glory of God and the exact imprint of his nature. Now, who does he say, previous verse, that God spoke through? God spoke through who? Prophets to our fathers. But in these last days, God has spoken through one person in particular. And he bridges these two worlds together. Old Testament prophets, teachers, New Testament Jesus. Old Testament prophecy of what's to come. New Testament Jesus has brought what God promised. And in verse 1, he says, God spoke to our fathers by the prophets, but in these last days he has spoken to us by his Son, whom he appointed the heir of all things. So first of all, he establishes who Jesus is. He's the heir of all things. Not just a guy that was really cool, that lived and taught some really neat things, and then died, and then they can't find his body. That was the popular argument. They stole his body. They hid it. They burned it. They made a story that he had risen from the grave. But the writer of Hebrews says something totally different. Whom he appointed the heir of all things, through whom also he created the world. Verse 3, he is the radiance of the glory of God and the exact imprint of his nature. Think about this for a second. I tried to put into words what it means to be the radiance of the glory of God. What happens when the sun goes down? That's very, very good, Betsy. It gets dark, right? Anybody scared of the dark? I am sometimes. Especially when I hear things moving in the house and it's weird. I like the basement. It's kind of creepy. Yeah, it's really cold and feels weird. But listen, sun goes down and the moon is out, right? You can see it better. See, the moon is always there. It just doesn't reflect the sun as much as it does when the sun disappears over the horizon. And here's what I'm not saying. That Jesus reflects the sun like the moon does for us to see at night. No. Jesus emanates with the same heat and force that the sun would like it likes the day. And some people have said that Jesus just reflects God the Father. Here's the problem with that. If all Jesus does is reflect some of who God is, you're not catching all of him. You ever stood in front of a mirror and looked at yourself? Yeah, y'all are like, absolutely not. I'm not vain at all. You walk out the door, you give yourself a check, and you look, but can you see all of you? No, you can't see all of you. Much like a mirror doesn't reflect everything that's in front of it, because you can't see the other stuff that's behind it. Instead of being reflected like in a mirror, Jesus represents all it means to be God, the same way the sun lights up the earth during the day. We feel everything from God through Christ that we would with God the Father. That's a really cool thing to think about. When he says he's the radiance of the glory of God, it's literally that God is moving directly toward us, actively, pursuing us, not waiting for us to come to him. Don't miss that. Everywhere I look in the scriptures to see how God pursues his people, it's active. It's never passive. And if all he is a reflection of who God is, that's a very passive God. That is not what I see in the story of Jesus. He's the exact imprint of his nature. He is the exact representation of who God really is, as he is. To see the Son is to see what the Father is like. To see Jesus is to see God. To see Jesus is to see God. Now, does God walk around with a big white beard and a body as God the Father? Well, that's okay to have an imagination like that, but I like to think of him a little bigger than that. But for us to see Jesus means that we see God in his very nature and behavior. He is God in every way. The exact imprint of his nature. What that means is there's this really cool phrase that people came up with. I'm not going to teach you what it means. That the essence of who Jesus is the same Godness that God the Father has and the Holy Spirit has. Everything that makes them God, Jesus has, the Holy Spirit has, and God the Father has. Right? Now y'all are like, wait a minute. That's weird. So everything that it means to be God was encapsulated in the person of Jesus. That makes sense? But it doesn't mean he like put on a man suit and pretended to be man either. Like we would put on a spacesuit. I watched this really cool documentary, by the way. I'm a nerd. I own it, it's fine. So I watched this thing about what you have to wear to take care of a certain hazardous situation with missiles. I don't know why I was watching this, but it was really fascinating. It happened a long time ago in Arkansas. But these guys literally put on these suits. Like, it looked like a space suit, but it wasn't a space suit. It was like a chemical treat. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's called a level A.
Level A suit. Thank you, Ralph. Air Force over there. Come on with it. So, like, let's take Ralph, for example. Stand up, Ralph. Come on up here. You just jumped into this illustration. Give Ralph a hand. Here he comes. Now Ralph, he didn't know he was going to do this. Ralph, what is your insignia mean there?
The bond represents the history of the DoD career field. So, starting back in World War I, then the lightning bolts are the hazards that are associated with the job. The wreath is a brotherhood or community, and the star represents the skill level.
Awesome. So he is an EOD tech, right? That's basically what you're called. EOD expert, explosive ordnance disposal in the Air Force. Now, when he goes out to work, you put on a suit. You have a big bomb suit, really hot, really heavy, 80 pounds of weight he carries on this really tall frame. And so, I just say that because I'm short. Anyway, so when you put on that suit, do you stop being Ralph? No. But you have a suit on. You're still you? What is it? How? The suit doesn't change or define you. Okay. So, the suit's there to protect you, but it doesn't define you, because who's inside is literally who you are. Okay, awesome. Thank you very much. Now, the reason I did that, I wanted you to see something. I really want to see him bring his suit in, but that'd be really cool. Yeah, he's like, yeah, no chance. Yeah, awesome. Well, we might do that. So here's what I wanted. Can I wear it? Sweet. All right. I might fall over because it's really big, but it's okay. I would try. All right. So think about this. When I say that Jesus, everything for him to be God existed in the body of Jesus, doesn't mean like Ralph puts on a bomb suit that he becomes something different. It's not like God inside a man suit. It's literally the two are welded so well together. They're infused together that his essence is the same, carrying all of what it means to be human and divine in the same person. It doesn't change who he is to take on humanity. It doesn't violate him at all in his godness to be human as well. Matter of fact, it's necessary. All right, so the next thing that he does is he upholds the universe. Look at what it says here. He is the radiance of the glory of God and the exact imprint of his nature. And he upholds the universe by the word of his power. Stop right there. Can any of you speak to something and it just kind of sits there and holds still? Some of you are like, yeah, I can talk to that rock and it's not going to move. Okay, let me help you with this. Did you make the rock? No. Think about this for just a second. Right now, as we are in this room talking about Jesus, he is sustaining all of us by the word of his power. There's nothing he can't do and walk with you through. Here's what this literally means. He is actively engaged in sustaining the world he created for his glory and the one he died to redeem. So right now, a lot of us think, and in my mind, I've done this too. Jesus ascends to heaven. We kind of put him to the back of our memory and wait for the Holy Spirit and pretend like he's not really like seated at the right hand of God, right? Like we know Jesus is in the Bible, but is he really alive and doing anything right now? Is he just kind of chilling up there, just watching us do things? He's actively engaged. There's never a time that Jesus is not working to carry all things to their end. There's never a time in our lives where Jesus is not actively working on our behalf. Think about it just a minute. The same word that created didn't just start the planet spinning and walk away and say, good luck. He said, I'm going to create you. I'm going to step into time I created to save you. And then I'm going to sustain you. I think he's big enough to handle your day-to-day problem. I think he's big enough to handle that hurt that's deep down inside. If he can sustain the universe by the word of his power, I think he can handle yours. And I started to study this and look at the language. And when he gets to the word of his power, it's literally powerful words. Like words that are just infused with the power of the Most High God. He's given authority to rule and to reign and to sustain each of us. So here's a question, it's a rhetorical question. Don't raise your hand. Why do we think so little of him? Why is it when his name comes up we start to chuckle or we look down at the floor? Or answering a question about our relationship with Jesus is hard. Cracking a joke about people who love him is easy. Here's why. Guilty. We forget who he is. And why he was necessary. Here's why it was necessary. It was only fitting that God would send his Son, take on flesh, walk this earth, live a life that we couldn't live, die the death we should die, to save us from our sin, because we can't do it on our own. He's the only one qualified to satisfy the demand for our sin. The only one. You know why? Because only the Creator can die for that which he's created to save it. That's the only way it's set free. And I think some of us sometimes treat him as a passing line in a song or a name in a book that we used to read and he used to matter. And he's seated at the right hand of the Majesty on high right now, sustaining in me by the word of his power. He didn't have to say anything, and he's enough. He doesn't have to do anything, and he's enough. He doesn't have to promise you anything. He doesn't have to do anything for you. He is enough. And I think we treat him as if he's a genie in a lamp. We just kind of walk up and say, hey, God, I need this. Jesus, I love you for today, but tomorrow I'm going to forget you. Hey, Jesus, I love you on Thursday, but on Friday I'm going to put you in that closet from where I got those clothes. I'm going to go out and do my thing. And on Sunday, I'm going to come in and tell you how sorry I am for what I did on Friday. But you're not big enough and strong enough and welcome in my world. And he says, listen, you have no idea how big and powerful I am. You have no idea. And the author says, he upholds the universe with the word of his power. You ever thought about this? Let's think about this. If he's just a man and in the ground he went, then how did he come out of the grave? If he's just a man, why could the grave not hold his body? Here's something I saw reading texts of the Passion story once again. I watched the Passion. I'm that pastor at Easter. Watch the Passion of the Christ, right? Weeping. Why? Because here's a guy, never met me face to face, died in my place, and at the end of the movie, my heart resounded with joy because he stands up, there's holes in his hands, and he walks out of the grave on his own. No one there to breathe into his nostrils a breath of life. He did it himself. He gets up and he walks out of the grave and he says, come, follow me. I can hold you. I can carry you. I'm big enough. I'm strong enough. When he said it is finished, it literally means that the death he died could not hold him. And the life he was resurrected to, this is cool. The life he was resurrected to could never taste death again. he would never die again. And I want some of that God right there. I want a God who's big enough, who died in my place, came out of the grave and can never die again, and can hold me in the palm of his hand and tell me everything is okay. God, but my world is falling apart. My parents, I don't know what's going on. My house is a mess. I don't have any friends. He says, I got you. I beat death, hell, and the grave. I got you. I can handle it. And here's, you don't know, man. You don't know the life that I live. You don't know the hurt that I've got, the pain that I struggle with. And I think we forget he's the only one qualified to satisfy the demand for our sin. I said this last week. He's more than a baby in a manger, more than a man on a cross. He's the Son of God put to death by his creation, for his creation, on something that he made. Jesus alone is powerful to save. Number two, Jesus alone is resting so that we can rest. And here's what I mean by that. When I say resting, he says it's finished. After making, verse 3b, there's a break there. He transitions the thought. So he upholds the universe by the word of his power, period. After making purification for sin, hold on to this, he sat down at the right hand of the majesty on high, having become as much superior to angels as the name he has inherited is more excellent than theirs. In my opinion, what the Bible says, Jesus earned the right to rest. He earned the right to sit. It's finished. No more work needs to be done. No more effort need to be brought to God and say, God, aren't you pleased with my sacrifice? Aren't you pleased with my offering? None of that is needed. Because now he's resting. So I did it all. It's done. Come find rest in me. How many times do we try to take back the finished work of Jesus for us? I mean, honestly, think about it for a second. What do I mean finished work? That he paid for your sin? How many times do we try to pay for our own sin? Practically. Think about the things that you do. You ever wake up guilty for something you did? Like the next morning you're like, why did I do that? I'm not to do that. God, I'm sorry. I'll go to church more, right? There's the honest answer. I'll go to church more. I'll show up at youth group. I'll give this. I'll tithe that. I'll go on that trip. I'll give to the needy because I have plenty. All in our bodies. I think sometimes we have to check our motives, because if we're not completely honest with ourselves, we can fool ourselves into thinking we're doing it from a heart that's been saved. But sometimes I think we're doing it from a heart that is still trying to be saved. Still trying to figure out how to get there. And he said it's finished. He is resting so that we can rest. The position that Jesus enjoys is a position of favor, of victory, and of power. He shares his Father's throne. Think about this for a second. When God needs something, Jesus is right there, but they're working together. You ever heard somebody call him King Jesus? Heard that phrase? King, it's a title. King Jesus. King, Master, Lord. He shares the throne with the Father. And here's the coolest thing about that. No one can take it. There isn't a person on the face of the planet or a power known that can take the throne from Jesus. The life of Jesus, when he was resurrected, stood outside the possibility for death. Death can't touch him. The grave can't hold him. There's no one more powerful than the one that can't be touched by death ever again. You ever known somebody who died, came out of the grave, and can never die again? You ever seen that happen? Like, it'd be really weird, just being honest, at a funeral, preaching a funeral, right? And the casket opens, dude sits up. I'm gone. I'm not even sticking around. That's just weird. Same thing happened back then. Jesus died, they take him to the tomb, they wrap his body in cloth, and then they go to find him and he's not there. And then they see him, right? Mary talks to him. I'm running. the other way. What? He died. That's creepy. I've never seen anybody die, be buried, and come out of the ground. I've never preached a funeral where the casket opened and the person sat up. The only person I know that has ever conquered death on his own is the person of Jesus. I can place my faith and my trust in a man who can raise himself up from the grave. I think he's powerful. Jesus alone. Period. The story can end right there. But the writer of Hebrews doesn't stop there. I'm going to read really fast. You ready? Verse 5. Or verse 4. Having become as much superior to angels, it's not going to be up there. I just want you to pay attention to the scripture in front of you or next to you. Please look on with somebody when we read this. Verse 4. Having become as much superior to angels, as the name he has inherited is more excellent than theirs. And then the writer starts asking questions that are not really positive when he asks them. Listen to what he says. For to which of the angels did God ever say, you are my son, today I have begotten you? Or again, I will be to him a father, and he shall be to me as a son. And again, when he brings the firstborn into the world, he says, let all God's angels worship him. Of the angels, he says, he makes angels winds and his ministers a flame of fire. Verse 8, but of the Son, listen to this and don't miss this, but of the Son, your throne, O God, is forever and ever. The scepter of uprightness is the scepter of your kingdom. You have loved righteousness and hated wickedness. Therefore, God, your God, has anointed you with oil of gladness beyond your companions. Verse 10, and you, Lord, laid the foundation of the earth in the beginning. Here, this is the writer of Hebrews speaking of God the Father, talking about the Son of God. Listen to what he says. You, Lord, laid the foundation of the earth in the beginning, and the heavens are the work of your hands. He's nowhere close to anything else ever created by the hand of God. He's totally altogether separate. The instrument of creation is being praised, and in those days he was thought of to be another angel, another messenger of God. And the writer of Hebrews says, don't mistake who Jesus was and is. He's not a messenger of God. He's the Son of God. Don't mistake him. Please do not miss this person of Jesus. The heavens are the work of your hands. They will perish, but you remain. They will wear out like a garment, like a robe. You will roll them up like a garment. They will be changed. But you are the same, and your years will have no end. And to which of the angels has he ever said, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies a footstool for your feet? The full weight of the scriptures that have stood the test of time prove Jesus alone for all time. Period. So here's my question. Got a little fired up. That may have been caffeine. I like to think it was the Spirit. Maybe both. Let me ask you this question. This is a time for you to honestly think, and I'm going to invite the band to come up in just a second as we pray. Have you seen Jesus this way? King Jesus? Altogether different? The risen, reigning King of Kings? All-powerful? Life-giving, life-sustaining, holding us, sustaining us right now in this moment? Have you seen him that way, or has he just been a name in a book? I want to invite you, if he's just been a name in a book, would you see and savor him and treasure him as King and as Lord? And give him the glory he's due. Let's pray together. God, I thank you so much for this night. I thank you for your word. I thank you for the truth that we see. That is Jesus alone, period. There's no one else fitting to receive our worship. There's no other name given to men by which we are saved. God, I pray that our eyes be open to the truth of who Jesus was and is. The suffering servant on the cross and the risen, reigning King of Kings. Father, I pray tonight that there's someone in this room that has been playing games with what to do with Jesus, that they would come to a place in their minds and in their hearts they recognize that Jesus is more than a name in the book, and he's more than a baby in a manger and a man on a cross. He's the man who came out of the grave and is seated at the right hand of majesty on high. And he is worthy of my surrender. Father, forgive us for making light of the person and work of Jesus. God, if there's someone in this room that has never surrendered their heart and their life to Jesus, I pray that they would do that tonight. Thank you for loving us. Thank you for loving us first. I pray these things in Jesus' name.